and recognitions that they've gotten over their time. I mean, you could do worse. There's a lot of bands out there that are like, oh, I wish we were Nickelback. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live. I had to think about the name of the show. The Master Modes Q&A Super Edition. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if you've never seen Star Citizen Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of the end of our week and we discuss the musical stylings of Canadian supergroup Nickelback while we wait for the countdown to go. Joining us on this show are four esteemed experts in the entire oeuvre of Nickelback. We've got Yogi, Rich, Michael, and Brent. I don't know what order you're going to show up on Zoom here. Say hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, Yogi, the camera stopped with you, so we'll start with you. Yogi, every show is somebody's first show. Before we get into the questions, let's take a few moments to introduce you, tell everybody who you are, what you do for Star Citizen.
Okay, my name is Yogi. I'm a principal vehicle programmer, and I'm not the biggest Nickelback fan, if that helps.
It's all right. I wouldn't trust anybody who was. Rich, who are you and what do you do?
I'm Rich, and I'm a really big Nickelback fan. So we need to fix the trust issues, Jared. And I'm the lead game designer on the vehicle experience team.
And when did you become a Force Ghost?
Very recently.
Rich is calling into us from a conservatory, which is a large glass enclosure with absolutely no way to block any of the light. So
yeah, and we've actually got sunshine today, which is very rare.
Yep. It's all right. Tell me the ways of the Force. Michael, tell us who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
I am Michael, also known as Bayor. I am the Director of Player Experience.
What does the Director of Player Experience do?
Mixed bag of things. So I run the live QA team in addition to the feedback collection team, in addition to player stats analyst, lots of different things. Basically, we're responsible for what is the game like in the public environment.
I really thought you were starting with like, it's a mixed bag.
Bayor es el responsable de lo que sería responsable por lo que sucede o cómo está el entorno de live.
Shows, I think. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm Brent, and I go by XLB, and I'm a live QA team lead, working for live QA, and I work the issue council and try to reproduce all your bugs from issue council.
Machiavelli Blue in the chat says, Brent, you're my fave.
XLB sería la persona que, bueno, sería unas personas encargadas de lo que sería el Q&A, el Quality Assurance, y sería el encargado de reproducir lo que son los bugs en el Issue Council, ¿no? De su equipo.
Folks who participate in Evocati and our various test streams would recognize you, but we were talking about, before we got into Nickelback, you guys, all of you, have hidden aliases. I mean, I think most developers have their developer accounts, but you also have these hidden aliases that you'll be in the game playing as. Don't tell us who they are. That's not this kind of show. But why do we run hidden aliases? What is the virtue of jumping into Arena Commander or the Precision Universe or the Test Universe or Evocati or something without announcing who you are and being known? What's that do for us?
There's a couple of different reasons we do that. Part of it is our job is to provide context for folks like Yogi and Rich. When we see players say, hey, this particular feature isn't working as well, or we see them talking about anything, we need to get into game, we need to test that. But it doesn't create a fair test if we're on a CIG account. Like say, for instance, if I go into Master Mode Squadron Battle and I'm on Bayor, -CIG, everyone's going to focus on me, right? They're immediately going to go, oh my gosh, the CIG person, I'm going to go attack them. That's not a player experience, right? That's not what other people are seeing when they join those matches. So it's important for us to go in on incognito accounts and test that way.
It's the whole, the scientist doesn't want to disturb the experiment kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's when you go in there, your very presence skewers the results. So
it's
the members,
the prime directive.
Is there? What's
We
the-
definitely.
Go ahead. No, go
Están
ahead.
comentando que se meten efectivamente en partidas de incógnito para analizar y dar feedback del juego, de cosas que tienen que hacer el juego, y se meten con otro nombre o incógnito para, evidentemente, porque para no llamar la atención o para no centrar la atención en ellos, ¿no?
And that can even be with masterminds, like Bayor said, with we join a match or something, we get pounced on pretty quickly.
So when you do log in as Jared is my hero 69420, that's to collect the true and honest feedback.
Correct. Yeah. Just to get that experience, we want to get what players are seeing when they actually go into these modes. So we want to use as authentic of an account as we can.
Okay. So the reason we bring this up at the beginning of this, because this show, if you haven't noticed yet, we have a collection of our developers who have been working diligently on master modes and all things flight experience for years and years and years. And then we also made an effort this week to bring in Michael and Brent from the player experience team, another team that's been working for years to collect, test, verify, and expose potential biases and feedback, in order to work with the developers to make sure that we, collect, that's not just collecting your feedback. We have to test it and analyze it and verify its veracity. That's not a good sentence. Before passing it on and making sure that it aligns with the intentions of our developers and designers and stuff like this. So we wanted to present as much of both sides of the situation as when we talked to the questions this month. We have, of course, collected questions from the community via Spectrum, which is our bespoke communication platform on robertsspaceindustries.com. We let you guys vote up which ones you wanted to see answered most, and then we pulled the ones that weren't either duplicates or just outside the mandate of the Mastermodes team. Like there were a number of questions that tended to veer into resource network and stuff, and we'll let those be handled by the resource team. I think we're still going to touch on it here and there from here. But let's start in with the questions. So the biggest question, the first question, the most obvious question, the one that was repeated the most, the one that we knew would come up when we were filming the interview. Yogi can attest, we scheduled this interview about 24 hours after we filmed for the Master Modes episode, a week before we aired, because we knew there would be questions, and especially this question. So we're just going to jump right into it. Given that most of the concentration has been on how Master Modes works with combat-minded ships, how will Master Modes have a substantial effect on how non-combat pilots and ships operate in the verse?
Okay, let's start with the big elephant. So in general, there is no difference between how we're treating combat ships and non-combat ships. If we want to have a consistent gameplay system, it needs to make sure that all the ships apply to the same rules, or not apply to follow the same rules. So although we have combat-focused and non-combat-focused ships, we still need to make sure that the non-combat-focused ships are basically fitting that scheme. And so the effect that Master Mode brings for non-combat ships, let's just talk about maybe like miners and salvagers, is just the same. You're going into nav mode to travel somewhere, and you're going into SCM mode to do whatever you need to do in your normal gameplay loop. So navigation or nav mode is just for traversal.
Está comentando el tema de la pregunta: ¿cuáles son las diferencias entre una nave entre los pilotos no combatientes y los pilotos combatientes en referencia a los Master Modes? Dice, realmente tratamos las naves de la misma manera, y nosotros, pues bueno, tendremos tú te vas a minar, por ejemplo, pues te estarás tu modo viaje para ir al lugar que necesites ir, y luego te montarás en modo estándar para poder realizar tu cosa, ¿no? Tu historia.
We do is like we give it a little bit more health or bump up some other defenses, but in any case, like you don't need to worry. Like the rule set is the same for all ships, and I mean the other thing with nav mode that came up was whether or not you can always escape a situation. So yes, if your navigation mode is completely spooled and your quantum drive is ready, you can usually quite quickly escape whatever combat situation you're in, unless there's some specialized ships that snare you in some way or keep you there. But this is depend on a case-by-case basis. Also, Rich, you want to add to something? Maybe flight
sure.
or so?
Yeah, so a big thing with Master Modes for us is it's not just about combat. We can keep saying this, but it's not just about the combat ships. We have reworked every single ship in the game right now. And we've got a base archetype we use. So there's a difference between archetype and role for us. So archetype is something we use internally to start a baseline with a ship. But then as we move forward, we start to look at the roller ship and what that, kind of individuality of each ship means, But yeah, every single ship, in the game is going to have a rework and feel different to what it has done in the past. And there's been a big focus not just on the combat side of things, but
Cada nave va a sentirse diferente y se ha reworkado todas las naves. Sí que es cierto que a nivel interno tenemos X arquetipos, pero luego también nos estamos fijando en el rol para darles personalidad a las naves, ¿no?
In our game, there is some people that love combat, but there is people that don't really want to do combat. So we've got to tune ships for an environment where it's fair for everyone playing the game, and that's been a big focus of ours. Because we don't want people that don't want to do combat to feel like combat is always a threat. It's just always something in the game. There's always got to be something to kind of balance that out. And it's going to be, there's going to be a big learning process. When it first goes out, there's a good chance we might not get it right. There's there's definitely a good chance we'll make some changes, and we'll definitely listen to the feedback, and we'll start making iterational changes on these. But our overall goal is that the game is fair for everyone, no matter what you come to Star Citizen for.
Yeah, Nona Nelson is like, oh no, they avoided that most upvoted question. No, we just didn't start with it. We're one question in. Chill. You mentioned that archetypes are not the same as roles, and this was one of the bigger misunderstandings that came from the episode there. Archetypes are are not about the overall purpose and intention of the ship. Archetypes are about a flight profile.
Claro, están hablando de del arquetipo, para calcar el tema de los arquetipos. Aparte que nos han dicho de que en una situación de combate, si nosotros tenemos el nav mode perfectamente cargado, deberíamos de poder escapar sin problema de una situación de combate y poder utilizar nuestro Quantum Drive. Ahora, si nosotros puede ser la situación de que puede ser específico una situación de que venga una nave que tenga herramientas para poder detener y evitar que podamos escapar con una nave minera, con una nave de comercio, ¿no? O sea, si viene algo con un snare, con una trampa, pues que en ese caso pues sería la historia diferente, pero en general que vamos a poder escapar de la situación de combate. Y luego aparte está diciendo de que hay arquetipos y de que dice cuando oye, no tiene por qué haber un arquetipo exclusivo para las naves de minería, no, sino que los arquetipos y los roles de las naves son diferentes. O sea, el arquetipo es simplemente una forma que nosotros tenemos para configurar las naves para que vuelen y al nivel interno.
Don't, because I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've been here 10 years. We're not always the greatest at naming things here. But it's important to know that archetypes are not the roles. They're not the intended function of the ships. They are simply a starting point for the flight profile that Rich and his team and Yogi and all them then go to drill down and balance from. It's just a start here, then customize. That's all that is.
Claro, el arquetipo es un punto de partida, ¿no? Para poder luego empezar a definir las diferentes personalidades de las naves.
So naturally we are going for that first, but we could have also called a light fighter archetype a small wiggle ship archetype or something like that, right? But it's not, but it's not as descriptive for us. So when we were focused on fighters, we just called it fighters. We're also calling something like light fighter bombers, which are not bombers. They just, for us internally, describe something. Just like as Jared said, like a flight profile. It does not mean that this describes the role.
Yeah, it's hard. What we struggle with this all the time. This is the thing that makes me look like this. I mean, come on, I look like this. I'm only 24 years old, people. This is what the job does. Is that
don't show, man?
Is that we share internal terminology externally, and that is not always super clear, and it's not always. It's not always great for messaging. We'll just be real honest with it. Yes, it would be better. It would be better sometimes if we could take more time to figure out what the proper external version name of this is. Whatever, it would avoid confusion in our parts. And we try. We genuinely try. Sometimes we don't succeed. In this one, we let internal terminology go external without saying what I just said here and whatnot. So that's on me. So.
Está preguntando de que hemos dejado que Y se está disculpando por la confusión de que hemos dejado que la terminología interna que nosotros utilizamos para definir los modelos de vuelo a los que se ajustan las naves salgan al exterior, se utilicen como públicamente, sin darle la definición esta de que los arquetipos son simplemente puntos de partida que ellos tienen para poder darle forma a los diferentes modelos de vuelo de las naves en particular.
Combat that and stuff. The most voted on question was, can you explain in detail how quantum
O sea,
damage
las formas de volar, más que modelo de vuelo, las formas de volar.
in nav mode?
Not yet. No, the thing is like obviously like quantum dampening and snaring, and in general keeping or trapping players within the SEM speed is something that makes or has a big impact on combat itself. But the thing is, we have not specifically implemented that part yet. It's on the to-do list for 3.2.3. Whether we're going to make it for 3.2.3 or not, we don't know yet, because there's a couple of things we still need to iron out. For example, do we simply say you cannot boost away? Do we need to take the size of the ship that wants to escape into account? Do we just change the spool timers? These are all just small details which we haven't tried out and internally tested yet. I mean, this also leads to the question that at 3.2.3 is like not the full experience for master modes, right? It's just the first step. There will be stuff missing. The ships will not be as varied as we would like them to have later. So this will be like, we will build on that work. But exactly if quantum dampening and etc. will be there on day one when master mode releases, I do not know yet. It depends how well the normal work progress continues in the next few weeks. We'll see.
Yeah.
El tema de lo que viene siendo el dampener, el quantum dampener, que todavía no se sabe si lo van a incluir o no en la primera parte de lo que viene siendo los master modes que vamos a tener en la 3.23. Lo que también nos dice que todavía no hay la variedad de naves o la variedad de comportamientos que habrá en el futuro, obviamente, en esta primera liberación de la 3.23, y bueno, habrá que esperar a ver qué sucede.
This post-Sysagon, I've been very specific about speaking about the first half of 2023. We don't have a date to give you, but for those, I already see folks in chat like, oh, this comes out next week, and they don't have it figured out. No, it doesn't come out next week. It's still being worked on, and like I said, when we have an update, I'm sure we'll share it with you. All right, but now you know why we didn't start with that question. With the new nav mode, with the way nav mode has been described, will we be able to stay in it and travel everywhere avoiding combat? What are the planned limitations of nav mode?
So you will be able to always stay in nav mode. Whether it's suitable for you to do that is a different question. You will just not be able to access certain operator modes from nav mode. So things like scanning, for example, you can, but the guns operator mode, the missile operator mode, mining and salvaging will not be available in nav mode. So you can just go around, but this also means like your shields are not effective, which means unless you're currently quantum traveling, you're still vulnerable to attacks. So, but when you're spooled and you are under attack, you still have the option to, I mean, not for now, but later when the new quantum travel experience comes online and you have quantum boost, you can actually get out of this thing very fast. But still, there's no clear no to this to the question whether or not you're invulnerable to combat. You're not. If you're flying around in normal space, you can be attacked.
¿Cuáles son las limitaciones que habrá en el modo de navegación? No eres invulnerable a ataques, te pueden atacar, puedes estar todo el tiempo que quieras, pero no podrás acceder a los modos de minería o a los modos de función de las naves, ¿no? De las armas, escudos, etcétera. Sí podrás escanear y podrás saltar, pero
why is the quantum interdiction stuff, why is this a secondary consideration to all the other breadth of work being done on master modes?
I think this has more to do with the realities of how games are developed. Things like quantum interdiction speaks very strongly to the quantum travel experience. And when we created master modes, we did this roughly in parallel with a new quantum travel experience for Squadron. The thing is that although these things work together, we're bringing them separately back to the PU. Quantum dampening is not a thing that is of a big importance in Squadron. So that feature, in combination with master modes, was just not ready. But we're But the thing is, if we don't move tech that's ready over early, then we're dragging a lot of like legacy with us all the time. So this basically for master modes, or for, let's say for IFCS, that means that large parts of the codes is there doubled there, because we know which parts we can throw away when master mode is active, and we know which parts we can keep. But if we keep too much legacy stuff around for a long time, it just increases the maintenance effort a lot. So,
Claro, está comentando de qué pasa con nuevamente, por qué no se le da tanta importancia, porque está en un segundo plano el tema de atorar el salto, ¿no? De bloquear los saltos. Y dice, bueno, de momento pues tenemos que tirar con lo que tenemos. En el Escuadrón 42 no es tan importante esa mecánica. Y
is using QD in Squadron 42, and we're moving a Squadron 42 feature over to the PU. So it wasn't in the original Master Modes mandate because it wasn't necessary in Squadron 42. Now it will be considered, and now it will be addressed in the PU, is what he said. He did not say it wasn't important. That's you.
Also,
Being
it's also
bad.
important to.
claro, está recalcando de que Yogi no está diciendo que el Quantum, o sea, el atorador de Quantum no sea importante, está recalcando esto. A ver, esto evidentemente se entiende así. O sea, ellos ahora mismo están configurando lo que es, están centrándose en Master Modes, pero luego pues implementar lo que es el QED, pero no. Como son dos cosas que vienen separadas y como pueden averiguar lo otro, primero van a centrarse en tener bien, o sea, primero, en el caso de Yogi se está centrando en sacar los Master Modes porque es algo que avanza, es algo que está saliendo adelante, y luego pues se incorporará lo que viene siendo el atorador de Quantum. No es una mecánica que vaya a ser, o sea, que se diga que no le tiene importancia ni nada, sino que en este caso tienen que avanzar ya con algo, tienen que ir avanzando y no pueden depender de estar aguantando tecnologías de legado o cosas antiguas, ¿no?, que estén ahí arrastrando y que incrementen la necesidad de mantenimiento, de ajustes en algo que realmente va a cambiar en el futuro, ¿no?
Implications. That's what we're referring to. I don't have my zoom in camera. I would stare for a while. Just imagine the camera's zooming in because I'm staring at you because you know better. All right. How do master modes, especially the nav mode, work in atmosphere? We haven't talked about it. Is there any reasonable change to how they work in atmosphere?
Nope. So it's going to fly the same as it does currently. So if you take a ship in nav mode into atmosphere, you're going to suffer the same drag, consequences of that. And then if you switch to SCM, you can be limited to those speeds.
Okay. Pretty simple. This was a big one. I've been wondering this one. Are there any plans for the SCM and nav mode transition times to differ between ships? For example, through engineering optimization, either ship role or even component archetype or tuning. Will it be the same for every ship or different? Talk to me about this.
No, they're definitely different. So the swap time is defined by two things. One is a value which we currently set per ship. The other one is defined by the quantum drive that you're using, because the quantum drive, when you go into nav mode, the quantum drive spools up, and this is the thing that unlocks the high speeds.
Ok, esto es una noticia bastante interesante. El tema de... Dice, no queremos hablar del gameplay de ingeniería porque está diciendo afectará lo que es el tiempo que tardas en pasar de modo navegación a modo estándar, o sea, de modo estándar a modo navegación. Dice, lo que activa el modo navegación es el spooling. Entonces sí dependerá del tipo de motor de salto que lleves a bordo de la nave. Dice que habrá valores en ingeniería, pero no quiere meterse en eso porque eso es algo que más adelante.
Interceptors, for example, they spool just faster because we want them to be fast and to actually work as interceptors when they need to. So the difference, there will definitely be different times. And specifically, the larger the ship, usually the longer the time.
Claro, aparte de eso también hay otros valores que entran en juego, como es el caso de los interceptores, porque se requiere que intercepten la nave, que hagan su trabajo, que harán el cambio de SCM a nav mode más rápido, y luego normalmente cuanto más grande sea la nave, más tiempo tardará en pasar a nav mode.
Yes, that's actually secretly what I'm actually saying. You should go to Reddit. Go to Reddit and say I said that. Just you. You're the only one who knows. I'm telling you. Why is there no UI and HUD update coming with the Master Mode update in 3.23?
That is not true. But, okay, it's a little bit true. So in general, the new MFDs and so on, and the new ship layouts and so on, which you've seen in the CitizenCon presentation, they won't be in 3.2.3. What will come to 3.2.3, however, is the visor-based update, which meaning all gunnery improvements, target brackets, like all the 3D thing that is projected to whatever it needs to be projected to, so at this appropriate distances. That stuff will make it in. This also means like we're removing all these old 2D based sprites that you have on the aiming UI. So there's a partial UI update for it.
And it should be noted that it's, I mean, as you'll see with other things, it's impossible to work on everything, all things at all times. And many members of the UI team have very important work with the mobiGlas, the star map, the internal maps, all the work that's coming into 3.23. So it stands to reason that there are some things that are going to have to be delayed and come later. One of the things that we talked about in the show.
Están hablando del tema de la interfaz de usuario nueva, que sí que habrá cosas que entren, como lo que sería todo lo relacionado con artillería, armas y proyección holográfica, lo que es el objetivo y tal, que eso sí que estará cambiado. Pero hay cosas, o sea, por ejemplo, lo del Quantum, que creo que todavía no está dicho, para lo que es 3.23. Y también comenta el tema de que luego Discord dice, bueno, el Star Map, el mobiGlas y todo eso, hay cosas que irán viniendo, que puede que tengan que tener un retraso porque hay mucha gente que está trabajando en eso y que lo iremos viendo. Vamos a ver qué pasa con eso, chicos. Mantengamos la calma. Que hay mucho trabajo involucrado y tal en ese tema y irán incorporándose. Todavía falta mucho para ver qué va a entrar de la 3.23. Calma.
The ship, how it handles, or just even health pools, or even like the weapon gunnery changes that are coming. I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that can contribute to why 1v1s sometimes don't feel the best, but the furball or the squadron battle feels really good too. Bayor, I think you have more on that too, of like why the 1v1s.
I'll mention a couple of key observations that I think players are having with it. Because we limited the velocity space with master modes, you're seeing people get this locked in feeling where they're hitting these max speeds and they can't go beyond that, and their opponent is hitting the max speeds, and you get kind of stuck in a position where you can't get an advantage over them. That's that locked in feeling caused by the velocity space itself. In addition to, a lot of 1v1s are mirror matches, what we call mirror matches, where you're facing the same ship. So the most common is going to be Gladius versus Gladius, right? And when you're facing the same ship, you have the exact same performance characteristics, so you can counterbalance one another pretty easily, and you end up with a head-on situation quite often. And this is something we're observing a lot of when players are talking about it, and we're advising Yogi, advising Rich that this is something that we're seeing. Players are talking about it a lot. And as for solutions, I'll kind of let Yogi and Rich talk about that a bit more, but that's the information we're passing on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So sorry,
No,
you
No,
go.
No, right, okay. Yeah, so we do a lot of iterative testing here on the vehicle team. So we're constantly testing new things, and Mike and his team do a really good job of providing the feedback, and then we discuss that feedback, but then we action that feedback in testing, and we try and find out what causes it. And it's never just like, oh, just move this thing here, or just move this thing here. It's always like a really complicated combination of things that that are quite difficult to get sometimes, and also difficult, to basically implement in the game, because we've got very complex mathematics behind a lot of the systems in the game. So is it just a case of just tweaking one number here and there? We've got to really break down and really understand the problem and what's causing it. Right? I said we do a lot of play testing. We get a lot of feedback internally, but we also do a lot of Spectrum in the forums and everywhere else to get a lot of feedback to understand, the way and why the combat is the way it is.
Yeah, it is extremely hard to like the feedback from master modes was very, very diverse. Like I mean, just the comments on the YouTube video that we had last time was very diverse. And then, I mean, we're also like monitoring Discords and so on. And like what I usually do is I listen to the worries that the players have, but I let Bayor and Brent actually and come up with actual proposal, because for me it's very hard to filter through what is what's actually actionable feedback. But in terms of like what we're trying, so we absolutely agree that the 1v1s, they're a little bit meh at the moment, but this is this has to do exactly with the problem of the velocities, right? We want to not go into high velocities because going into high velocities just causes one thing, and this is dragging out the fights more. The only class that really benefited from high velocities were light fighters, and in the legacy systems there were not a lot of space for like light and medium fighters. For medium and heavy fighters. So in terms of like what we're trying to make this more interesting in 1v1s is like we're trying to break up that specific pattern where you have two ships circling each other and then they're feeling locked in. Like one of the tries that we did was actually adding more dynamic rotational speeds, so that when you hold boost, your boost pool needs to spool up first before it is expanded, and then it actually not just gives you higher accelerations, it also gives you higher rotation rates and so on. That did a little bit, but not enough yet. We do hope that with other things like more in general, like smoothing accelerations out a little bit more, so you don't get like a super strong initial kick, but rather like ramp them up, that this will create enough like diversity in the maneuvering, so that we're getting like in a better place with the 1v1s again. That said, 6 degrees of freedom is very hard to balance. Like Michael talked about the feeling of locked in. Another worry that always comes up is like the feeling of backstrafing, right? So the backstrafing feeling itself is just mathematically hard to endure, because you need to have an insane amount of acceleration to actually overcome a target that is accelerating backwards on you just to get around by this, right? That's really, really complicated. So we're thinking about trying things out like X-shaped velocity spaces, so that you can, for example, not fly as fast backwards as you can fly forwards. But what this exactly does with the dynamics is insanely hard to predict, like even internally, because even when we're playing internally, it doesn't, like, it produces some results, and sometimes we think, oh yeah, this might work or so, but the actual test is only when we're playing with actual players and actually letting them play for a while, for a couple of days or weeks, so we can actually see if like the new changes are creating some dominant strategies that then can be not countered or something like that.
Yeah, you make a good point. Testing on this is not.
Pero está comentando yo en general de que dice que una de las cosas que pasa ahora con el combate, le están comentando en general, ¿no? Los chicos, que una de las cosas que pasa es que ahora mismo, también lo comentaba ya, ¿no? De que cuando están enfrentándose las naves, que se quedan como pilladas porque van las dos a la misma velocidad, dos gladios y tal, que da la sensación de que se queda encasillado porque no hay forma de buscar cola, o que incluso cuando nosotros queremos buscar cola a una nave que va en marcha atrás, que se complica porque que hace falta muchísima aceleración, ¿no? Entonces, que están buscando soluciones y que no es tan fácil como cambiar unos ajustes y ya, sino que hay mucha matemática involucrada en esto, y que pequeños ajustes que a priori pueden parecer que no, tienen un cambio muy grande en lo que son la mecánica de cómo vuela la nave en sí, y que tienen que ir tirando con feedback interno y probando realmente cosas, porque y luego pues dejando que los jugadores los prueben y sacar conclusiones. También comenta yo que el feedback de los Master Modes es bastante diverso y que se apoya mucho en Bayer para para poder, en Bayer es su compañero, ¿no? Y XLB para creo que ha dicho, porque son los dos, vamos, para poder tratar de filtrar un poco ese feedback y sacar conclusiones de ese feedback, ¿no? Porque es demasiado diverso tal. Entonces, eso que les ayuda mucho. Y que obviamente pues que están metidos en los foros, están constantemente pendientes de lo que pasa con el vuelo y demás, ¿no?
We see it as a challenge, really, to like, kind of look at it, because we take everyone's opinion on board, and it's up to our job, and working with the other teams to kind of analyze the feedback, and it's fine that players react in a certain way, if they don't like it when they first play it, but we've also seen people that didn't like it and now they like it. So it's important to be balanced with the general view on the feedback. There's definitely some people that don't like it, but there's definitely some people that do. So it's about balance, and I don't have the kind of feedback personally, and that's a really important thing. Is it's not personal. It's it's about the feature itself, and it's up to us to make that feature as good as possible. So it kind of motivates me personally in a way. I'm not sure how the other members of the team feel, but that's the way I feel about it.
Classic Force Ghost response, Rich.
I definitely know that I see a lot of the feedback, whether it be negative or positive, and it's definitely helpful when we get the constructive feedback, when people will give us more like, hey, you know, have you guys thought about this? And it gives us a lot to think on versus just, oh, this is awful. So definitely keep that coming. Definitely keep all the good constructive stuff coming.
Yeah.
I do say though that actually, I mean, ultimately, we need to decide what we're going to do with the game. So just even if you think that somebody else said what you think, it's always important. And sorry, I'm talking to our player base here, right? Please always put your feedback in. Write what you have, what you feel. Like the feel is super important for us, right? Because you can argue about speeds or whatever, right? But if you forget what the feeling is, or to describe what your feeling is, then often it's, for me, harder to understand what's actually going on. But in general, I was very happy with the amount of of feedback and the diversity of the feedback that we got. Even some of the negative feedback, because AC, MM, or the master mode, AC mode, experimental mode, we purposefully added some stuff in there just to try out how things feel. And some of the feedback, even when it was negative, quite often it actually matched up with our expectations, which also helps us to know that we're on the right track, right? So yeah,
that's a fantastic point, Davey. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I want to make sure I don't want to lose that. Sometimes you test a thing you think is bad. This is an aspect of our project and all of game development that sometimes I think gets lost. Like, why would they put that out? And sometimes it's like, well, we think it might be bad. We think maybe that's not the way we want to go. We have a mechanism in these experimental modes for Arena Commander where we can test it. It's like we don't have to guess. We don't have to wonder if maybe that's not the way. We can actually put it out for testing and then know. So that sometimes, and you're going to see this as experimental modes continue, as the what's the other PTU called? Experimental PTU or whatever it's called. As that continues, we're going to use it to test things we're uncertain about. We're going to use it to test things that
Está comentando de que agradecen tanto el feedback, mientras sea constructivo, tanto el feedback negativo como el positivo es importante, y que lo más importante es que transmitamos cómo nos sentimos, que no nos olvidemos de describir lo que es la mecánica, sino que también las sensaciones que nos da la mecánica en sí, los master modes, que es importante. Está comentando, Discolando, ¿no?, de que el Arena Commander pues sirve también, pues a veces ellos creen que algo está mal y que pues muchas veces la respuesta del usuario pues es, oye, que esto no me gusta y tal, y efectivamente pues coincide con lo que pensaban ellos, ¿no? Pues pero que también tienen el Arena Commander para poder probar realmente, porque si tienen dudas de si algo puede funcionar o no, pues para eso está el Arena Commander ahora mismo y para eso les sirve, ¿no? Para poder tener ese feedback real de lo que está pasando en el juego a través de los jugadores nosotros, ¿no?
And that's valid. That's a valid point, and it's one that we take in. It's one that I heard, like Rich and all of us were on the line for a long time before the show started, and and we take that responsibility very seriously. And I'm speaking on their behalf right now because maybe it's easier if I do it, but we know that this is a change. We know that there are people out there who genuinely liked the old way and stuff. We believe this is better for the longevity and the lifespan of the game. And so we're trying this. We're trying this right now. We believe in it. We've been talking about it since 2 Citizen Cons ago when we first introduced it. So I would like to encourage you to stay the course, keep trying it, try it in the PTU, try it in every other situation, allow us to continue tuning it, allow us to continue developing it. And everybody that I know, everybody I've talked to here, both on the show and off the show and whatnot, is really excited about the potential of this. So I hope you give it the chance. Because I want you to like playing Star Citizen. So,
quiero que le deis la oportunidad a los Master Modes, quiero que os guste jugar a Star Citizen, ¿no? Es lo que dice Discolando, así que dale la oportunidad, vamos a seguir adelante a probarlo, ¿no? Y a ver qué pasa.
Is lowering the skill ceiling. Is this true? Is this false? Do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? Does this make things easier?
Oh, that is a bit spicy. I would agree.
Si los Master Modes bajan el nivel de habilidad de los pilotos.
1v1s, we have a lower skill ceiling.
El techo de habilidad.
At the same time, we're also lowering the entry, like the was it the skill floor? The skill floor to actually do PvP or space combat in general, right? So I do think that for the longevity of the game, the changes we're doing right now are actually suitable. I think the question towards whether the skill ceiling is a little bit lower is the same question in terms of like, what can we do to make 1v1s better, right? Like it kind of steers in the same environment, right? So basically for me, from my point of view, it goes back to just making the flight dynamics a little bit more dynamic and a little bit better so that people who are spending a lot of time in their ships, they learn what the ships actually can do. And so that the maximum performance envelope of a ship is not directly always available, but you have to work for it in order to get it. That's at least what I read out of that.
Okay. Let's see. We're doing good. Let's cut through. Let's do some more of the big questions here. We're in our big question era here, in the center here. So let's take on racing.
Estoy comentando de que el tema del techo de habilidad y todo, que también el nivel de entrada para poder pilotar se ha mejorado, y eso es algo que mira en pro de la longevidad del juego. Para que un jugador, es cierto que la gente que tenéis poca experiencia en volar es mucho más divertida la experiencia general, y yo creo que sí que hay un techo de habilidad. Hay un techo de habilidad fastidiado ahora mismo en lo que son los Master Modes, porque bueno, hay que tener en cuenta muchas más cosas que solo el 1 versus 1. Sí que es cierto que a nivel 1 versus 1 puede estar así, pero puede dar la sensación de que haya bajado algo, pero es que yo creo que simplemente una nave no puede sobrevivir a 1000 combates como hacía antes, ¿no? Entonces hay que ir viendo cómo evoluciona.
I think that is, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong.
Y que estaba relacionándolo ellos, evidentemente, o sea, yo que estaba relacionando, oye, mira, esto pasa con lo mismo que queremos resolver con el combate 1 vs 1 de Dog Gladius, ¿no? De ajustar eso para tratar de darle más chicha. O sea, hace falta tiempo.
Acceleration when you go forward, left, and up, right? Because the accelerations on each direction, they actually accumulate. The problem is that the more acceleration a ship already has and the more spherical tuning is, that advantage can get up to 70% in the worst case, right? So that's why we cut down on these accelerations, and this basically deprived racers and high-skilled PvP players of the capabilities to quickly evade, because they couldn't access that acceleration anymore. So, and I believe that is part of the question why it is perceived that you're less agile in racing. Would you agree, Michael?
I would, and it's really an important question to understand our process a little bit, because we see comments like that, and it's easy to go, well, that's just wrong, and then just go, well, we should just dismiss that. But in reality, what we do is, well, why are they saying that? Let's look into the process, understand the context of what they're saying, and figure out what exactly is going on. And Yogi is exactly right. It's the tricording issue. You got a lot more acceleration from that, and it's much more noticeable if you're going faster. So it seems like when you're in nav mode, you have less control, even if necessarily the accelerations aren't different between nav mode and SCM. So we don't dismiss feedback even if it has sort of the wrong statements in it. We try to understand that context, understand what is that, are they getting at, what could they...
Está hablando en el modo de las carreras de que la gente dice que no tienen tanto control como antes en las naves, y que eso se debe a la eliminación del tricord, que ya no se puede hacer el tricord de la forma tan fuerte como se hacía antes, y que yendo más rápido, pues obviamente eso se nota todavía más, y que puede dar esa sensación de que hay menos control sobre las naves, pero en realidad lo que se ha reducido es eso para prevenir que jugadores con habilidad puedan evitar el ser atacados.
So absolutely true. The thing is, like, when you go fast, the scale of things that you see around you is also changing, because the feeling of speed is not based on how fast you are, but it is relatively how close things come by you, right? So if you, strictly speaking, if you have a racetrack which you can fly decently well with 1200 meters per second, you can have an equally challenging racetrack for the SEM speed envelope that has just much narrower tracks, as an example, right? So, yeah, I mean, the racing community in general was pretty critical about SEM, about master modes, and it also encouraged us to tweak a little bit the tricording limiters that we added and so on. But I do think that in order to allow better racing, we should probably look at different kinds of tracks. At this point, we are also not sure exactly how we're gonna treat the post SEM speed space in general. But this is still like a future topic. But all these things they can still like change, and like when these things change and we think it's better for the game, then some other parts have to change or be adapted as well. That said, I would say the best racetracks that I could imagine is one where you actually need to swap between the modes, so that you have like areas where you're supposed to like using your cornering speed much more than other cases, right? Like, and then I don't know, you come around a corner, you see, the next target is like, I don't know, 20 kilometers away, swap to nav, go. We could even think about racing tracks later when we have the quantum boost mechanic to actually that require you to boost between, I don't know, a planet and a space station or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of things we can do. The main thing is just like racing will always work. However, the tracks, they might just be look different than now.
El tema de la sensación de velocidad y todo eso, que realmente lo que se deberían adaptar también son los circuitos, porque al final la velocidad también es un referente a lo rápido que pasan los objetos cerca tuya. Si hacen los circuitos más angostos, notaremos más sensación de velocidad y que pues, se pueden utilizar varias cosas, como por ejemplo introducir el Quantum Boost dentro de las carreras, o requerir que tengas dos diferentes, o sea, tener una mode y Quantum Mode para hacer la carrera, que se pueden introducir diferentes soluciones para mejorar los circuitos. Los circuitos deberían, en teoría, de adaptarse a lo que sean los Master Modes.
There's nothing to do for the turret gunners in that case. So when we're talking about like crew roles in the future, this would be the perfect time to, I don't know, swap out fuses or stuff like that, and doing all the maintenance on your ship that you want to do.
Yeah. And let's not forget that multi-crew gameplay is not the full breadth of the intended multi-crew experience that we want to build is not limited to just being turret gunners. This is one of the principal reasons the Idris, even if the Idris were art complete, and it's not art complete, but even if the Idris were art complete, why it's not, we don't just dump it into the precision universe. There will be a time and a period where the focusing eye of development will turn to, all the multi-crew gameplay necessary for these ships and stuff like this. Resource Network is the next big part of that and stuff, and you will begin to find more and more uses for multi-crew people than just sitting and firing in turrets. Because we all want that very much, and Resource Network is the next big push on that. And then there will be many others after that. How does the power triangle relate to master modes? As an example, nav mode does not even have weapons or shields available. So does the power triangle just not do anything in nav mode?
It does. Actually, there's a misconception that the shields and weapons are powered off. They are powered on because while you're on nav mode, they're still regenerating. They're just not effective or active, so to speak, right? So when you're in nav mode, nah, you're always active. So as I said, like the only thing that we currently have in is that when you're in nav mode, the regeneration rates of your weapons and shields are a little bit lower, but whether we keep that or not is a different question. So your guns, they still regenerate ammunition. Your shields are actually not, they're not regenerating in your shield phases, they're regenerating into a buffer. But when you swapping back from nav mode to SEM, that buffer is then filling up the shield phases quite quickly, and it cannot be, and when this happens, that process cannot be interrupted.
El triángulo de poder hace algo, lo que serían los modos de navegación, dice que sí, que sigue funcionando. De hecho, podemos regenerar los escudos en principio más lentamente, lo regeneramos ahora, y también las armas.
Honestly, I'm not too, or shall I say the team, we don't know yet if we're keeping this or not. I think it's actually behind the CVAR. At the moment, we don't see any reason to actually allow that because we're really fast, and we would like at least the opportunity that the counter gameplay against missiles has more to do with your maneuvering and nav mode than just putting out some countermeasures. Actually, maybe Brenton Bayo, could you maybe talk about how this is currently being used in the arena modes, arena commander modes?
Sure. What we see is that people are using missiles to counter someone moving into nav mode. So typically when somebody is moving into nav mode, there's a spool up period. And if you're paying attention to the signature, you can actually see an EM spike on the ship when they go into nav mode. And so people who are skilled and understand what that looks like can already start to spool up their missiles to sort of counter that, or they can watch the speeds. They can watch the rate of closure or the rate of separation that they're seeing, which is available on the UI. And they can start to lock on a missile and launch one to sort of counter that and force them either to drop out of dab mode to launch countermeasures or to figure out a manual way of evading or take a hit from a missile. There's some balance things I think we can probably talk about in the future to figure out, how to get that to work a little bit better. But it is interesting gameplay, and it does add a little more spice to the use of missiles than we had before.
And I think it just some of the behavior.
El tema de está preguntando sobre el tema de las contramedidas en el Quantum Mode, o sea, en el NAM Mode, que ahora mismo pues cuando se cambia a NAM Mode hay un aumento a las emisiones, y que nosotros solo si un jugador experimentado pues puede darse cuenta, incluso por la distancia a la que se separa, y que es un buen momento para lanzar misiles, y que es algo que se está haciendo ahora mismo en el universo persistente, y que es algo interesante para poder tirar misiles. O sea, que es algo que es un gameplay que está surgiendo interesante, que todavía no saben lo que van a hacer, pero de momento parece que tiene buena pinta el quedarse con esto para aumentar esa jugabilidad relacionada con los misiles.
ISE in SCL is work in progress. It's where the thing is now. At the moment, we're having this conversation. There are things in ISE that change the day after the show goes out. And the show goes out, and then they're like, oh, by the way, we changed this. And I'm like, couldn't have that information just 4 days earlier? That'd have been cool. It happens. It's part of doing all of this outreach in the middle of our development. It's part and parcel.
También comentan, ¿no?, que cuando estamos en NAM Mode hay que recordar que nosotros tendremos el escudo seguirá cargando de forma pasiva cuando estemos en NAM Mode, más lentamente que lo haría si estuviéramos en modo SCM, y que cuando nosotros pasemos a modo SCM de NAM Mode habrá como una especie de piscina, hay una piscina, ¿no?, que se recarga el escudo, y que eso no puede impedirse mediante daños. O sea, y luego funciona el escudo normalmente.
We've made certain decisions based upon things we've learned and things we've seen along the way, but those things change, and so we're definitely not afraid of changing that rule, in that circumstances. It's just one thing that's open. We thought it might work that way, but if it doesn't work that way in game and the feedback says otherwise, we'll just, we can change it.
Yeah. There's a bit here. We focused a lot on the native, because part of what we're here to do is to address, some of those concerns and stuff like this. But there's been a very healthy groundswell of positive feedback about Master Modes. It's one of the reasons we're so excited about putting it out in 3.23 and seeing the more testing. Mike, you mentioned being able to check the EM readings and stuff. The next question I have here is: are there any changes to generalized stealth mechanics with Master Modes besides being able to tell when they're switching? Are there any other changes to how people will work in missions? Yogi?
Yeah, it might be a question for Yogi. We have put in changes recently, not specifically to Master Modes. People might have noticed them actually in 3.22.1. Broadly, there's been some changes to signature readouts and how those work, thanks to some of the the communication between my team and Yogi and Rich's team to be able to kind of go over that. But there's been some changes, and those have been inherited into the Master Mode stuff as well.
What role, if anything, does the component rework, the resource network? Like again, we don't want to go into the full breadth of the resource network and stuff, but is there? I think there were a number of questions, probably only 3, but of people who are wondering if this work is completely separate from resource network, or if this work overwrites. Like, does the archetype mean we can no longer tune our components? We can no longer change the performance profiles of our ships because they have an assigned archetype now because of Master Modes? Are these exclusive, or are these complementary features?
I think they're definitely going to complement each other. We're definitely working in sync with each other on what these features mean for the flight. And I don't think you're going to see anything taken away. I think you're going to get more out of this. You're going to be able to move your ship and your components in more directions in the future. Which will kind of strengthen what that ship means. Depending on the choices you make for that ship. And it's critical to the flight. It's critical to the combat performance. And it's critical to that moment in time. So if you've made certain choices, it's going to mean certain things. Let's say your signature and heat goes up. in sync, it's gonna, make you more, kind of vulnerable and stuff like that. So the player's gonna have more choice, in the future. So.
Some of what you've said about nav mode being intended to help you escape and stuff is obviously made some players who dream about being a bounty hunter kind of nervous. It's like, oh well, if the mode switch is designed to help people be able to get away, obviously we're going to have to do something to help with folks who want to pursue a bounty hunting profession. I know, Yogi, you already said a lot of the QED work and stuff is still to be decided and stuff. But what are your initial thoughts? What are your initial thoughts on what we can do to make master modes work for players who specifically want to catch up and capture their prey when we've created a mode designed to help them get away?
Well, I mean, it still boils down to that you cannot just like if somebody wants to escape, and he has the better equipment to do that, and he has more experience and skill, or she, then that ship might escape. But if you want to work as a bounty hunter, you are reliant on having very dedicated equipment anyways. One of the things we're thinking about here is the importance of distortion weapons, since the quantum drive is the thing that allows the velocity advantages or speed advantages in nav mode. We're thinking about making the quantum drive, for example, very susceptible to distortion damage. But being susceptible to distortion damage means that the attacker needs to bring either a EMP device, or they need to bring or swapping out some of their hardpoints, which are actually distortion weapons. And distortion weapons are always going to be less effective as in taking down shields. In fact, in 3.22.1, we actually did a pretty big change to the distortion system so that shields are very resistant against distortion damage. So you need to bring energy weapons to actually bring them down, which again goes a little bit more in the direction of like as a player you being forced just.
¿Cuáles son tus pensamientos acerca de lo que viene siendo el tema de Bounty Hunter y tal? Y bueno, pues dice que una de las cosas que hemos pensado es que las armas de distorsión pues puedan afectar a lo que viene siendo hacer sensible el tema del spooling, o sea, del motor de salto a las armas de distorsión. Pero aún así las armas de distorsión harán menos daño que lo que viene siendo las armas de energía a láser. O sea que también traer equipo especializado para poder hacer eso.
Exclusively for you and your team.
Como puede ser un Quantum ED, como puede ser un pulso electromagnético. O sea, pero si la persona que tú vas a por ella tienes la habilidad y tiene el conocimiento y mejor equipamiento que tú, se va a escapar, ¿no? O sea, pero se supone que tú dedicándote al Bounty Hunter deberías de tener herramientas dedicadas para poder facilitarte la tarea.
The Bounty Hunter dream is core. It's one of those core things. We've talked about it forever. It's a. I can speak if I'm allowed to speak for CR here. It's something he's very, very interested in, always has been and stuff. So.
Está comentando que el tema del Bounty Hunter es pieza fundamental, aunque siempre estamos hablando de eso y que.
Honestly, can't remember the name now. You can expect to learn more information about it.
Cuando llegue el momento podremos saber más información acerca de la mecánica de Bounty Hunter, ¿no? Pero que es algo muy importante para el juego.
If I can, I want to do 2 more questions. Can I do 2 more questions, guys, before I let you go?
Yes, let's go.
I asked you live so that you can't say no without looking like a jerk. So, these are questions more about balance. This question came in and says, what are your red lines in terms of balance? Are there any parameters that you're simply unwilling to adjust, like SCM speeds or IFCS slowdown? Is there?
¿Cuáles son vuestras líneas rojas o que hay cosas que no se van a cambiar o esto no escucharemos a esto, no consideramos esto porque hay cosas que son así y punto? O sea, si tienen algún tipo de cosa así.
Never ask these developers this, but I want to say.
En referente a los master modes.
Talk to these people. Is there anything that's actually off the table?
Okay, so nothing is off the table. Of course, we're somewhat more resistant towards certain things than others. Obviously, like the SCM speed limits are a couple of was brought up by the community quite a lot. But then again, we're getting a lot of advantages from that. So we will try to address the worries that we have. For example.
Trataremos de atender las preocupaciones que tenemos acerca de lo que son las velocidades, pero de momento el bajar las velocidades tiene muchas ventajas. Sí que bien que estamos abiertos a las posibilidades, pero sí que somos algo más reacios a cambiar lo que serían las velocidades. Seremos más conservadores a la hora de cambiar o modificar esto, pero no significa que que vayamos a piñón fijo con eso y ya está.
But it needs to be going through a proper process internally, because like it's just not something that we can right away promise. But nothing, and I mean nothing is ever fixed, right?
Yeah, and I do think it's important to say that, like with any kind of virus stuff that we're tuning, we're always open to trying different things, but we've set out a framework of what we think works, and in the end, it comes down to a choice, because before we had a lot, we had a lot higher speed, and that wasn't always positive. So we've made the decision based upon certain factors that a lower speed works better, but it doesn't mean that moving to a lower speed means it never has any negatives, because a choice is end of the day. We've made that choice to go slower, and we do think overall it's going to be better than the speeds we had before. But it's never going to be 100%, 10 out of 10. It solves every single problem that we have in the game. For example, because we're based in certain physical realities of flight, and the kind of power performance and stuff like that. So we're a little bit kind of tied to kind of physical realities more than kind of saying we're not going to change these numbers.
Yeah, but Rich, I want to be able to do everything I want to do at any time I want to do it, and be the only one who can do so. I don't want anybody else to be able to do that too, so that I can win. That's all I'm asking.
It sounds like you need to start your own games company.
All right.
Sounds like he's trying to be Luke Skywalker there.
Yeah.
No. Han Solo is the best pilot in Star Wars. I'm sorry. What did I say? Han Solo? That's trash. Lando Calrissian is the best pilot. Oh, sorry, Lando. Sorry, Lando. I besmirched you and said Han Solo. This is the best pilot in Star Wars. This dude took out a Death Star in a freighter, not a little trench with open air where you can go in and out in a tunnel. Didn't know where the power supply was. Log on the power source. It should be the main reactor. Didn't know where it was going. Had to do it in a freighter. Did it without the Force. Did it with a shield around and a whole freaking armada. Luke Skywalker, the best pilot. Which one of you said that? Drop off the call. Bye, Brent.
That's a red line.
That's a red line.
Yeah.
You flustered me so much, you made me say Han Solo was the best pilot. What the hell? All right. So last question. Hold my safety, Lando. So after release, after 3.23 goes live, what metrics will you be watching to determine which portions of master modes are successful and which may still need additional tuning? I want people, this isn't not a comprehensive list. I'm not going to say that these are the only things we're listening to. Just give us some example of after 3.23, this is the kind of feedback we're looking for. This is what we're looking to see positive and negative results on. What are we looking at afterwards?
So usually what I'm looking for to pass on to Yogi and Rich is ways to deepen what we have. So what I see what we created is a framework. And so now once we have a framework, we need to find ways to add depth to it later, to add individuality to these individual archetypes and these individual ships. And so that's the kind of feedback I'm looking for, is somebody specifically talking about, hey, I'm trying to use my Kartual, my Santokiai, and I'm finding it not very effective in these specific ways, and it doesn't match the role that as described. I'm looking to pass that kind of information off, or I'm using my Vulture, and it's basically impossible for me to get out of a combat scenario. I never do. I'm always trapped into it. Those kinds of things where players are presenting problems that I can then pass off to the team with context and go, okay, this is what we're seeing players observing. Does this match the design we're going for? Maybe we need to make some adjustments there. And it's that deepening. How can we add further depth? How can we add further skill checks? How can we actually make this a little bit better of a skill curve, a little deeper, all that kind of stuff? That's usually what I'm looking for.
You lost me after you said somebody was flying the car to wall. I'm like, I knew you were lying after that.
I fly the car to wall all the time.
From the back seat. Ooh, provocative. Oh, I'm tangled up in my
That
earpiece.
is provocative.
All right.
But just to add on that,
Okay,
right? There was some more to it though, right? Because what we're also getting from Michael teams are sometimes recordings of actual flight combat that happens, which we can then analyze and go forth and back. We're getting KDR graphs and so on. So sometimes we see that something is wrong in the data. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff. Sorry. There's a lot of stuff that is going on. Like it's not just like the qualitative stuff that Michael just described. It's also quantitative data.
Yeah, that's an important part of. I do want to mention that we don't just look at Spectrum and Reddit or YouTube videos and go, "This is how it is." We compare that what people are saying with what we observe in the data from our behavior analytics too. We look at kill to death ratios. We look at accuracy values. And we combine that with our own observations in the game. So sometimes people might be like, multi-crew ships are terrible. Then we'll look at the kill-death ratios and we'll go, well, it looks like they're doing really well. And then we'll go into the game and look, and go, wow, everyone just avoids them. And like provides that kind of context. We don't ever look at a singular piece of information and go, this is the truth of the experience. We look at everything we possibly can to provide all of that context.
Unless they're a content creator in which their opinion weighs 10 times more than everybody else.
Nope. Content creators are also
you cut away. I was really trying to keep a straight face with that one. You cut away. I wanted them to see just how strong a straight face I could keep when I said that. That's it. That's our show, everybody. Thank you for sitting through another episode of Star Citizen Live. Our weekly live stream at the end of our week. This is Lando, and I'm still thinking about that Luke Skywalker comment. If you haven't checked out this week's ISC, it was a wonderful episode about many of the FPS improvements that are coming online in the upcoming Alpha 323. Not all of them, but some of them. We'll be back next week for SCL with the members of the FPS team there. All those folks you saw there, we'll see if we can't get Zach to bring his shades and a shotgun with him. He literally showed up to the interview with shades and a shotgun, and I'm like, you're not getting away with that. We made his mom very proud anyway. And then, of course, next week's ISC is a big one that I know a lot of folks have been waiting for. It's the character customizer in Alpha 323 in much of its glory. Still a work in progress, but just what we're already seeing is some cool stuff. You may have seen some sneak peeks in this week's show. It's going to be a good day for truly taking ownership of your character going forward. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, we're going to raid somebody. I think we're raiding, is it still PC 101? I think we're still raiding PC 101. That should show up above the chat there. If you want to go raid PC 101 or whomever it ends up being, be nice, be respectful, and when you wipe your feet and say, we love you, John Crew, when you're there. So, thanks a lot. Take care, everybody. That was Yogi. That was Richard. That was Michael. That was Brent. I'm Jared. I can remember names. And we'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.
Vale. Vamos a revisar aquí una cosita, chicos. Y ahora os traduzco de la movida. A ver, aquí está. Sería en el 25... 35... Por aquí más o menos. A ver, lo que han dicho al final es que a la hora de feedback, de lo que están buscando el feedback ahora, es el feedback que buscan a partir de ahora cuando sea 3.23, ¿vale? Es el tema relacionado con las naves, de cómo se sienten las naves, de cómo se siente una cartual, de si la Santos que hay hace lo que... Como jugador yo siento que hace lo que describe o que no lo siento de esa manera. Ese es el feedback que le están buscando para darle forma a las naves. Luego, aparte de eso, y comentan que ellos tienen herramientas internas para ver stats, del rollo de las muertes, el KDA, ¿no? Las muertes, asesinatos y asistencias. Entonces, comparando con eso, comparando también la puntería, el acierto que tienen las naves, y luego su observación personal, pues tratan de darle forma, pues eso, al feedback, a los reportes relacionados con las naves para poder pasárselo al equipo, ¿no? De ver si una nave pues no la usa nadie, si está siendo competente, si no. Tratar de pues mirar lo que es el feedback de la gente en general, de diferentes medios, de diferentes lugares, ¿no? Spectrum, obviamente, pues es uno de ellos. Luego Discolanda bromeaba de que y por supuesto también un streamer pues le hacemos 10 veces más caso que a una persona normal, ¿no? En plan de bromeando. Porque obviamente pues al final nosotros, o sea, yo por lo menos como streamer considero que a la hora de dar feedback simplemente por ser streamer no tiene sentido. O sea, lo que pasa es que yo tengo horas de juego y eso pues me da la posibilidad de dar un feedback, ¿no? Por esas horas de juego, pero no por el hecho de ser streamer. Por ejemplo, en mi caso, ¿no? Hablo de mi caso particular. Y ahora me anda con eso, supongo que pues como para quitarle... pues para decir cómo son las cosas, ¿no? Que realmente que cualquier persona que mande su feedback es tan válido como el mío, ¿no? Obviamente, es tan válido como el mío, de que es una opinión. Y que mientras sea constructiva, pues es tan válida como la de mía o la de cualquier streamer, ¿no? En definitiva. Nos estaba comentando también de que viene para lo que sería la semana que viene el tema de todo lo que son lo de las barbas y todo eso, que vimos ahí algo y tal, y pues dice que está bastante entusiasmado por mostrar esto. Vamos a ver un detalle aquí que había.
Work in atmosphere. We haven't talked about it. Is there any reasonable change to how they work in atmosphere?
Nope.
Las naves en atmósfera, que no hay ningún cambio de cómo trabajan, pero
We call out this stuff really early.
hay una cosita que quiero, no sé si será el 25. Mira, si eran 25 eran 35, o sea, tiene que estar por aquí. Ahora hay 28.
We want them to be fast and to actually work as interceptors when they need to. So yeah, so the difference, there will definitely be different times. And specifically, the larger the ship, usually the longer the time becomes to spool, to swap the modes.
Yeah, unless we create something hyper specialized, you know, like a ship that's designed for that kind of switch like this.
Hay una cosita por aquí.
What was it?
Por aquí.
Drift Bosa says, so pretty much they want to make this game single player. Drift Bosa, nobody else, nobody else, everyone earmuffs. I'm talking, yes, that's actually secretly, just you. You're the only one who knows. I'm telling you. Okay. Why is there no UI and HUD update coming with the Master Mode update in 3.23?
Esto es la parte que sí.
That is not true. But okay, it's a little bit true. So in general, the new MFDs and so on, and the new ship layouts and so on, which you've seen in the CitizenCon presentation, they won't be in 3.23. What will come to 3.23, however...
Dale, lo que serían las MFDs no estarán en la 3.23. Las MFDs que nosotros hemos visto, los visores de las naves que nosotros hemos visto en la CitizenCon, la presentación de CitizenCon, no llegarán a la 3.23. Vamos a seguir.
Is the visor-based update, which meaning all...
Todo lo que es lo que vemos en el visor, en el casco, digamos, o sea, lo que vemos representado de todo lo que tiene que ver con artillería, armamento, sí que lo veremos cambiado.
Gunnery improvements, target brackets, like all the 3D thing that is projected to whatever it needs to be projected to, so at this appropriate distances. That stuff will make it in. This also means like we're removing all these old 2D based sprites that you have on the aiming UI. So there's a partial UI update for it.
Yeah. And it should be noted that it's, I mean, as you'll see with other things, it's impossible to work on everything, all things at all times. And many members of the UI team have very important work with the mobiGlas, the star map, the internal maps, all the work that's coming into 3.23. So it stands to reason that there are some.
Vale, ya sabía yo que no lo había dicho bien y por eso lo estoy repasando, chicos. Dice que hay mucho trabajo, hay muchas personas trabajando en cosas, o sea, en otras cosas como son el tema del star map, el mobiGlas, cosas que vienen a la 3.23. Sí que se viene esto a la 3.23. ¿vale? Que esto como fue rápido y tal, y escuché ahí cosas y tal, no lo había escuchado bien. Por eso vuelvo y digo, efectivamente, esto sí que se viene a la 3.23, ¿vale? Lo que no se viene son el tema de los MFDs de las naves todavía. Pero sí que se vienen cosas de lo que es el visor, lo que veríamos con el casco y tal. O sea, vamos a ver qué tal y sobre todo...
Things are going to have to be delayed and come later.
algunas cosas tendrán que ser retrasadas y tendrán que venir más tarde, refiriéndose a lo que viene siendo lo de las MFDs de las naves, ¿vale?
One of the things that we talked about in the show, and Mike and Brent, this is one of those ones I expect to hear from you quite on, is the struggles with master modes and 1v1.
Vale, no, eso está, ya está. Bueno, pues está todo bien. Es esto nada más. Solo quería aclarar eso, chicos, y ya. Vamos a ver. Anda por ahí. Airo. A ver, saludo otra vez. Shurcho, Luis, Airo, Senor. Lorcara también está por aquí. Arquigo también está por aquí. Semastro por ahí. Cervantes también. The Winnell también está por ahí. Lovegoose, Nobleza también está por ahí. Ese gato, Shelocer también. Dargo también está por aquí. Mr. Yellow también está por aquí. Anet, el Cuco también. Invictus, un saludo a todos, chicos. Refone también está por aquí. Buenas, el Blazar. Invictus también anda por aquí. Un placer teneros por aquí, chicos. Espero que hayáis disfrutado del Star Citizen Live. Si tenéis cualquier preguntilla, pues darle ahí al asunto y yeah. A ver que vea aquí cosas. Vale. Vamos a ver qué ocurre con el tema del Star Citizen. Ay, vamos a ver qué hay por aquí. Community Spectrum. Testing chat. Estamos en calendario para empezar la siguiente test preview. A lo largo del fin de semana nosotros tenemos una build cocinando ahora. Estamos esperando poder empezar la evaluación en el siguiente par de horas. Así que serían las 6 de 4 a 6. De 4 a 6, chicos. Bueno, pues ahí está. Ahí está el tema. Qué ganas. Qué ganas de que empiecen con esto, ¿no? Y que lo puedan sacar adelante, la verdad. Qué ganitas, chicos. Qué ganitas. Todavía no tenemos... No. Todavía no tenemos cosas que hay que tener. Ahí está. Vamos a ver. De nada, Charlie, supongo que te refieres a lo del SCL. Y esta noche a las 12 puertas de salto. Sí, parece que sí, ¿no? Porque son 6 pm, 6 pm serían... bueno, a las 4 serían 16... 00 CST. Son las 23. A las 11. A las 11 sería. A partir de las 11 de la noche. Entre las 11 y la 1. Entre las 11 y la 1 sale. Entre las 11 y la 1. De la madrugada nuestras. Aquí. Vamos a darle caña, chicos. Vamos a disfrutar del verso. ¿Qué coño pasa aquí? Adobe Simpson EDA saldrá hoy para los nuevos Avocati miembros. I know, vale, sé que todos estáis entusiasmados por uniros en el testeo, pero procesar esto será hecho después de una semana de que se firme el periodo para tenerlos todos o tal. O sea que esperando poder firmar el NDA, chicos. Estoy súper pendiente de poder firmar el NDA, locos. Súper pendiente. Me hace una ilusión de la hostia, chicos. La verdad que me hace mucha ilusión. Me hace mucha ilusión. Sí, Charlie. Sí, efectivamente. Estoy esperando a poder firmarlo el asunto, el NDA. Tengo muchas ganas. Para ser Evocati, nobleza. Pero bueno, tendré que esperar, ya habéis visto la noticia, ¿no? Tendré que esperar para la semana para que me den el go. O sea, es lo que hay. No, coño. Ahí. Quería mirar antes el Death Track. Los supresores. Los supresores tienen una penalidad en el daño. Una penalización, perdón, en el daño.